The first crack in Arlen Wade's composure came the moment he felt his son's crumpled drawing slip from his briefcase and drift across the marble floor of the 42nd floor lobby like a fallen leaf. He stared at it with a hollow ache spreading through his chest, because it wasn't just a picture. It was the last thing his boy had handed him that morning before school, the last bright moment before the call from the nurse saying the fever had returned, the last reminder that he was failing to hold together two worlds that were rapidly pulling him apart. He bent to pick up the drawing with trembling fingers, already late for the boardroom presentation that could decide whether he kept the job he desperately needed, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. His eyes burned. His body froze. Everything in him felt like it was collapsing under the weight he'd pretended he could carry alone. If you feel even a small ripple of love for single parents, for fighters who stand even when life tries to break them, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories of hope and compassion reach more hearts. As Arlen pushed through the glass doors of the executive floor, the golden wash of morning light stretched across the polished surfaces, reflecting the towering skyline beyond. The office felt too bright, too sharp, too unforgiving for a man who'd barely slept, who'd spent half the night at the urgent care center trying to comfort an 8-year-old boy worried that his dad might lose the job that kept their fragile world standing. Arlen's shirt was wrinkled, his tie was crooked, his face looked as though exhaustion had sculpted new lines onto it. Yet he pushed forward, forcing steadiness into his steps. He couldn't fall apart. Not today. He was almost at the boardroom when he heard her voice behind him, calm, collected, the tone of someone who never lost control. Mara Elvrin, the CEO. She was known for her rare mix of elegance and steel, a woman who'd built the company from near collapse into an empire of innovation and respect. People said she never missed anything, never forgave anything, and never, ever showed personal interest in anyone who worked beneath her. Arlen stiffened when he sensed her presence approaching, her heels tapping sharply against the glass-polished floor. She asked him to stop. Her voice was low but steady, and it slid right through him like a command his body obeyed before his mind caught up. When he turned, she was standing close enough that the morning light framed her like a silhouette of authority, golden hair pulled into a sleek twist, a mustard-colored blouse that mirrored the sunrise, and eyes that studied him with startling clarity. He felt exposed, as if every frayed seam of his life was visible in the wrinkles of his shirt. She reached out without warning. Her hand touched his tie, fingers brushing lightly against his collarbone. He held his breath, stunned by the unexpected tenderness. The CEO fixing a low-level manager's collar was unheard of. But Mara didn't look at him with pity or judgment. She looked at him as though she could see the storm inside him and had paused her entire empire just to acknowledge it. Her touch was gentle, controlled, almost careful, as though she didn't want to break something already fragile. She smoothed his collar into place and adjusted his tie with slow precision. The moment stretched, quiet and intimate in a way that felt completely out of place in the towering glass office. And then she leaned in, so close he could feel the warmth of her breath glide past his ear. What she whispered made the ground beneath him shift. She told him she knew. She knew about the sudden absences. She knew about the nights he left early and the mornings he arrived late. She knew he was raising a child alone. She knew the boy had been sick again. And she knew he'd been trying to protect his job by hiding the truth. Mara said she recognized the look of someone who carried the world alone because she had once carried it too. Then she told him something that pierced deeper than any reprimand, deeper than any kindness he had ever received. She said he didn't have to fight alone anymore. Arlen felt the knot in his throat tighten. No one had said that to him since the day his wife had died 3 years earlier, leaving him with a newborn son and a heart full of fractures he had never fully let heal. He swallowed hard, trying to reclaim his voice, but emotion rose like a tide he couldn't stop. Mara stepped back, her expression unreadable yet softened by something he never expected to see in her, understanding. He followed her into the boardroom, where the vast window wall cast a sweeping glow over the long table. Executives shuffled papers, screens blinked alive, and the usual corporate tension thickened the air. But Arlen felt different now, unsteady but strangely grounded, as though someone had placed a hand on the echoes inside his chest and steadied them. As the presentation began, he tried to focus on numbers and projections, but pieces of Mara's whisper replayed in loops, mixing with memories of nights spent comforting his son's coughing fits, mornings when he couldn't afford a taxi and carried his boy on his shoulders to the clinic, and moments of exhaustion so deep he nearly fell asleep standing up. He had built walls around himself, convinced the world didn't have room for a man who was both father and provider and still grieving. And yet someone had seen through all of it. Someone he never expected. When his turn came to present, the room felt like a stage closing in on him. His hands trembled as he picked up the remote. The lines on the screen blurred. His voice cracked as he tried to speak. Panic swelled, hot, sharp, merciless. He thought of his son lying at home with a fever, waiting for him. He thought of losing his job, of failing again. His vision darkened around the edges. Then he saw her. Mara didn't speak. She didn't gesture. She simply met his eyes from across the room, her gaze steady, grounding him like an anchor thrown into a storm. And something inside him steadied. He breathed. He centered himself. He found his voice, not because he was confident, not because he was strong, but because for the first time, he didn't feel invisible. He delivered the presentation with raw honesty, acknowledging the challenges, the risks, and the possibilities as though he were telling a story rather than reciting data. The room shifted. People listened. They leaned in. His sincerity, his vulnerability, became strength instead of a flaw. When he finished, the silence in the room was no longer cold, it was thoughtful. After the meeting, Mara walked with him to the break area filled with sunlight and gentle hums of distant conversation. She didn't touch him again, but her presence felt like something warm standing beside a part of him long frozen. She told him the company had a support program for employees raising children alone, something he had never known existed. She said she wanted him on a new project that offered more flexibility, more remote work options, and more breathing room for his life to coexist with his job. Arlen felt the weight he carried for years begin to lift, piece by fragile piece. It didn't vanish. Grief never vanished. Worries didn't magically disappear. But suddenly he wasn't alone in fighting them. Someone had stepped into his collapsing world and quietly propped up the beams. A request for viewers' comments: tell us what moment of the story touched you the most. Your words matter more than you think. As Arlen walked toward the elevator, sunlight streaming across the hallway like a golden path, he pulled the drawing from his pocket, the one that had fallen earlier. It showed two figures holding hands, beneath a bright yellow sun. He had always assumed the second adult figure was his late wife, a memory his son refused to let fade. But today, looking at the picture again, he realized the second figure wasn't wearing the soft pastels his wife once loved. It wore something bold. Something golden. Something like the color of Mara's blouse. He exhaled shakily, overwhelmed by the realization that life, even shattered and storm-worn, could still surprise him with moments of mercy and unexpected kindness. He stepped into the elevator with a heart no longer collapsing, but slowly, carefully rebuilding. If this story touched your heart, please support it, like, share, comment, and subscribe to help more people feel seen and understood. In the quiet descent toward the lobby, Arlen felt a single tear fall, warm and alive, a tear not of sorrow, but of something he thought he had lost forever. A second chance. Hope. A reminder that even in the towering glass labyrinth of the modern world, compassion still found its way through the cracks. And as the elevator doors opened to the glowing daylight below, he stepped forward carrying the truth that would guide him through everything to come. Sometimes the smallest gesture, a fixed collar, a quiet whisper, could save a life without anyone ever realizing it.